former first overall pass rusher was just made available. Could this be the player that the Detroit Lions actually add to their roster before the 2025 season? Let's talk about it. What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, and this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. That includes news, updates, analysis, and so much more. And today we are going to be talking about the latest news to break in the NFL, and that being the release of former first overall pick Jadeveon Clowney from the Carolina Panthers. Now, obviously, Jadeveon Clowney played for the Panthers. What does this possibly have to do with the Lions? Well, as we've all been talking about for most of this offseason, the Lions are in need of pass rushing help, and Jadeveon Clowney is another veteran pass rusher that's now available via free agency that a lot of Lions fans, I'm sure, are going to be looking at and wondering, could the Lions possibly be targeting him and looking to add him to the roster? Because in a lot of our minds, that is still a fairly big need that went mostly unaddressed throughout this offseason. Obviously, the Lions did still add some talent along the defensive line, re-signing Levi Onwuzurike, re-signing Marcus Davenport. They drafted Ahmed Hassanin in the 6th round of the 2025 NFL draft. So it's not like they've completely ignored the position, but it's not exactly the focus that a lot of Lions fans have basically been putting on the team when it came down to this offseason. Obviously, with the Lions sustaining so many injuries across the defensive line last year, pass rusher was a very, very big need amongst a lot of us. And so now that you have another veteran pass rusher and someone of the caliber of Jadeveon Clowney, there's going to be a lot of murmuring and a lot of wondering of like, hey, could this finally be the player that the Lions, have high on their list? And they feel like, we have to go out and we have to go add this player to our roster and make him a part of, the defensive line, the collection of defensive line talent that we already have. And when it comes down to Jadeveon Clowney as a player, I don't think there's many other better options that are currently available. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about whether the Lions could potentially bring back Zadarius Smith. And obviously, Zadarius is another proven veteran. And obviously, he was in Detroit last year, so he's already very familiar with, our system and the players. And there's already a little bit of rapport there. But Jadeveon Clowney, again, is a former first overall selection in the NFL draft. He has obviously bounced around quite a bit over the last few years. Obviously, last season he played in Carolina. Before that, he was in Baltimore. And before that, he spent 2 years in Cleveland. And even before that, obviously jumping around. So he's definitely reached this point in his career where he is more of a journeyman. And I don't necessarily believe someone that's looking for a long-term contract somewhere, but just somewhere where he can still be an impactful player on a roster that hopefully is probably even aiming for a Super Bowl, because that is still the thing that's missing from his resume. He's been fairly consistent as far as being healthy. He's been obviously very impactful when he's been on various rosters. Coming off this season, he had 5.5 sacks, so still producing at a high level. Had a very good overall defense grade when you look at PFF at 70.8, very good pass rush grade at 73.2, and still a very solid run defender when you look at his ability to play those early down situations as well. So those are all, things when it comes down to his game that could make him an ideal target for the Lions in terms of just like, hey, he kind of checks all the boxes when it comes down to him as a player. He's, he manages to stay healthy. When he is on the field, he's impactful and he can play, all 3 downs, right? He's not just somebody that you have to worry about rolling out on 3rd down in those situations. And because he's, again, not quite that old yet, he's about 32 years old right now, you can still believe that there's still a little bit of tread left on those tires for him to play at a really high level. So the question really comes down to, would he be a priority for the Lions? Is this someone that Brad Holmes and the coaching staff would actually prioritize as someone for the Lions to bring in-house and actually sign? Because again, they haven't been very, aggressive when it comes down to adding pass rush help. And actually, if you go back to the NFL draft, when Brad was asked about this, first and foremost, he seemed very annoyed to be continuously asked about the need for a pass rusher, but also he was very candid in saying that, like, hey, the need for a pass rusher is something that, he believes the fans harp on more so than they believe that they need internally. And so if you're at least, trying to talk about the likelihood of the Lions going out and getting a player like Jadeveon Clowney, for me personally, that doesn't put it very high on the priority list. When you start talking about when Brad is saying like, hey, that's not a high priority for them, it may not be, right? And it's not because they don't think that, Jadeveon Clowney is not a good player, I do believe there is a really strong belief amongst those in the building that, like, hey, we have enough talent. We were able to sign Marcus Davenport, and when he was healthy, we were getting, quality snaps out of him. When obviously having Aidan Hutchinson back and having one of the best pass rushers in the league is going to make things look entirely different for everyone on that defense. And then you go and you look at someone like Levi Onwuzurike, who I think a lot of people look at as like, well, he'll probably slide in and play more 3-tech this year, but he was also playing a lot of those big end, roles as well, and playing on the outside a little bit more. And so it wouldn't surprise me that even in him coming back this season on that 1-year deal, that you do continue to see him rush from the outside a little bit more than you do necessarily from the inside. And so if you get those kind of players and then you add in a Josh Paschal, you add in an Ahmed Hassanein, you look at some of the other players that they were able to bring back that played serviceable roles once those injuries mounted up, you might have enough bodies. The question is, though, are those bodies of the same ilk or of the same quality of a Jadeveon Clowney? Maybe not all of them. I think Marcus Davenport and Levi Onwuzurike could definitely give you a lot of solid performance at that opposite edge of Aidan Hutchinson. And obviously Josh Paschal has been serviceable, not necessarily breakthrough, but at least serviceable in playing that role, especially when it comes down to defending the run. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Lions didn't necessarily look at adding Jadeveon Clowney as a priority. However, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say that they do see it as a priority. They do think that Jadeveon Clowney is somebody that's worth adding. The next question that's going to come after that is basically, is he worth the price tag? Whatever that price tag is that he's going to be looking for, that him and his representation are going to be floating out to teams, does it fall within the boundaries of what the Lions are looking to pay? Currently, the Lions have somewhere around $42 million when you look at over the cap. I don't believe that takes into account the rookie class that they still have yet to sign. So again, that number is probably less than what is currently being reported on over the cap. But let's just say, for the sake of like this conversation right now, that's the amount of cap space that they're currently working with. Obviously, someone of Jadeveon Clowney's stature is not looking necessarily for the veteran minimum. He's probably still looking to make a nice size contract. It just comes down to, again, if you're the Detroit Lions, what is the price that you're willing to pay for a player like Jadeveon Clowney? The Panthers just released him when he was going to be due $13 million this season. So clearly that might be a little bit out of the price range, right? The Lions released Zadarius Smith, and I believe he was going to be due somewhere around $11 million, and they weren't willing to carry that. So it doesn't give you a lot of hope that it's anything north of $10 million. Like, it's probably something below that if you're, again, just speculating on what the Lions may be interested in paying for another pass rusher to play opposite Aidan Hutchinson. So if you are able to clear the hurdle of like, hey, the Lions are interested, they do view adding a pass rusher as a priority, great, you check that box off. Next, like I said, is the box that you have to check off in terms of the financials and understanding what type of contract you're able to get. If Jadeveon Clowney isn't necessarily looking to make a huge amount of money, let's say he is willing to take something under the $10 million range and that fits into what the Lions are willing to pay, then great. I know people may also wonder, like, hey, if the Lions have $42 million in cap space, why would they be, not willing to sign someone over $10 million? Well, it's fairly documented that Brad Holmes likes to go into the regular season with a nice size of cap available, right? In the event that they do need to sign more players due to injuries or things like that. Like, you don't want to have to go into the regular season and not have the funds available to potentially sign, other players. It's also worth keeping in mind they have not started off-season workouts yet. You haven't had OTAs, you haven't had training camp. And so in the event, again, knock on wood that nothing happens, but if someone is injured and you need to go out there and go sign a solid veteran at a nice size contract, you want to make sure that you have that money available. So it's not as simple as just saying like, well, hey, Jadeveon Clowney is worth $10 million or $10+ million. Go out and give him that. That immediately cuts you down to where that's less money that you have to use in the event that you actually have a need that pops up anywhere else on your roster. And like I said, I don't also believe that the over the cap number is including the rookie contracts that they still have to hand out as well. Not that that's going to take up a huge amount of cap, but it's money that still has not yet been allocated. So just keeping that in mind when it comes down to the financials. The third thing that I believe that you have to keep in mind, or at least you have to wonder if you're a Lions fan who's interested in adding Jadeveon Clowney to your roster is Jadeveon Clowney going to be able to play a role on this team that he is happy with? Just because that the Lions may want to bring him in doesn't mean that the role that they have for him is one that he really wants. He may come into Detroit and or be looking for a team where he gets to play a heavy amount of snaps, where he gets to be, a true starter. and isn't in a heavy rotation. There's always the possibility that if he were to come to Detroit, that's exactly what he would be in, because like I said, you have Marcus Davenport, who was your starting edge opposite Aidan Hutchinson last year. You have someone like Levi Onwuzurike that they like to get on the field, and someone like Josh Paschal that they like to get on the field as well. Obviously, those players could split snaps with Hutch as well, but if Aidan Hutchinson is fully healthy by the time the regular season rolls around, we all know that they like to play him at a very high snap count. So those are things to also consider when it comes down to if the Lions would actually add Jadeveon Clowney to the roster, is what kind of role would he play? And is it a role that he would be happy with? Because again, it's not all just about the dollars, and it's not all just about like, not every player has that mindset of like, oh, I just want to go out and get a ring. Some players still want to feel like they're very much contributing on the week in, week out basis. So that's another thing that the Lions would have to contend with. And then the last thing is, obviously, does Jadeveon Clowney even want to come to Detroit? That's another hurdle that has to be cleared when you start talking about, like, could the Lions go out there and prioritize him? Sure. Could they be willing to pay him what he wants to be paid? Sure. Could they be willing to give him a role that makes him feel valuable? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if Jadeveon Clowney doesn't want to play in Detroit, Jadeveon Clowney's not going to try to come to Detroit. Jadeveon Clowney may decide that he wants to be, somewhere maybe where it's not cold at any point in the season. Maybe he wants to play in a certain type of defense. Maybe he wants to be, in a certain city, that's relative to like what, a climate or just situation that he wants to be in. All of those things start to factor in. And I know just because we look at Detroit now as like, hey, they're a true contender, they should be a hotspot for a number of places, which I fully agree with. That doesn't mean that Jadeveon Clowney is going to put the Lions that high on his list. They may be on his list, but again, he may have other locations. He may want to play in, New York. He may want to play in, with the Rams or something like that. Like, there are so many other places that, again, whether it's about contention or just location, that he may choose to be instead of choosing to come to the NFC North. So those are things to at least keep in mind. I say all that to say, if you are sitting here wondering, like, are the Lions going to be interesting? I don't think it's going to be very likely. That's not to say that they're not going to be interested. Brad Holmes has said this time in and time out. If a player that is highly productive becomes available, they always do their due diligence to look into that player. And that's exactly what I expect Brad Holmes and this front office to do. I expect them to at least look into Jadeveon Clowney. I expect them to reach out to his agent and gauge his interest in coming to Detroit, and even probably get a gauge on what he's trying to, get paid salary-wise. But that doesn't mean that they're going to go full tilt and absolutely try to bring him in. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I do think they feel somewhat sound with the talent that they have on the defensive line. I know fans like to say that you need another pass rusher opposite Aidan. I fairly can say that I sometimes feel the same way, oftentimes feel the exact same way. But I also understand that there are other ways of creating pressure. There are other ways of getting to the quarterback outside of just having two good defensive ends. You can still have internal pressure. You can still simulate blitzes. You can still blitz corners, safeties, all of those different things to create the same type of effect that all of us want, which is at the end of the day, get the opposing offense off the field on third down. If you can continue to do that, I don't care where that player is playing. I don't care if it's an edge. I don't care if it's a linebacker. I don't care if it's a safety. Do what is ever necessary to help your defense just be effective on third down. So when it comes to Jadeveon Clowney, I think he would be a great player to try to acquire, but I just won't be surprised, and I don't think you should either, if the Lions aren't able to bring him in, or if he chooses to go elsewhere instead of choosing Detroit instead. But again, those are just my thoughts and opinions. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think the Lions should prioritize Jadeveon Clowney, and why do you think that? Or are you more so on the same side that I am, where like you would understand if they didn't choose to bring him in? And if it's not Jadeveon Clowney, maybe you think they should bring in another player instead. Let me know that in the comment section below as well. But like always, guys, if you're looking for any more additional Lions content, you can always find that on prideofdetroit.com. There are new articles being written every single day, and I'm sure there's going to be some additional information about this very scenario of Jadeveon Clowney potentially being a target of the Detroit Lions. You can find that over on Pride of Detroit as well. But if you want to stay locked into any of our video content, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and that's going to keep you locked into all of our video content, whether it's a live stream or a video that we post. But with all that said, I'm Miko. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.